Darlene here from Darlene's Garden. I was watching a video this morning. It was from Petals on the Slab, Petals on the Paving Slabs, and he issued a challenge. I decided to take him up on it. There are 6 questions, and it was in response to the 2019 gardening year in review. And the person that challenged the Petals on the Paving Slab was Rue from Rue's Life, and the challenge was started by Jazz from Alternative Smallholding. Anyway, I decided to take up Petals on the Paving Slabs challenge. So here are my 6 questions and answers. Question number 1. What you enjoyed the most in 2019? I enjoyed starting my tomatoes indoors, my peppers too, but mostly my tomatoes. It's the first time I had started my own tomatoes. I had always purchased them from the store, starts from the store. But I didn't have to do that this year. I started my own, and I really enjoyed that. I also purchased some worms and started a worm bin. I really enjoyed that. Question number 2. What was my best crop of the year? I think I do have to say it was probably my tomatoes. They had done, it wasn't a huge crop. Well, I don't have a huge garden, but I think they probably did better than in years past. I had tried some different varieties, so that was probably my best crop of the year. My lettuce did real well too. And I had a cabbage that was left over from the year before. What was my biggest challenge of the year? Right toward the end of the year when it started cooling down, I planted some carrots in a container that I knew was deep enough for carrots. They came up to probably about that tall, and they were looking really good. The very first frost we had, gone. They just disappeared. Some peas I had planted close to them stayed for a little while, but apparently I needed to have protected the carrots. We didn't really have that cold of a frost at that time, but they didn't like it, so that was a failure. My worst crop of the year, this is question number 4. My worst crop of the year, I have to say it was my cabbage and my broccoli. I was not successful I got plants that were like so, and I didn't seem to be able to grow them past that big. My beets didn't do all that well either. I did have a few beets, but it was like they were like only the biggest one was like that big around, instead of big like I want beets. Very first time I'd ever planted okra. I haven't even hardly ever eaten okra, but I planted it too late in the season, and I had about 3 okras on it, and then it got too cold for the okra. Number 5, what new skill did I learn? Well, for one thing, I learned how to take care of my worms. That was a brand new skill. I learned more about raising tomatoes than I had known before. I did a lot of watching Charles Dowding's No-Till, and I learned that I have certain areas where I tried to grow things that were very stubborn and didn't want to grow things. So I know that I still have some work to do on my soil. I also learned I had one fennel plant, and it grew really tall and had lots of blooms and seeds on it. But I learned that part of the reason the other things I planted near it didn't do very well is because fennel does not get along very well with other plants. So this year I notice it's coming back up. I'm going to attempt to move it and put it somewhere by itself. The other thing that I had this year it was kind of really a success but a failure at the same time, was one particular pepper plant. It got taller than me. It was really tall. It just kept growing and growing. Never did have any peppers on it. What I learned was that I probably should have snipped off the top when it was short, made it bush out, and then it probably would have made some peppers. But the reason I let it grow, I wanted to see how tall it would get. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. If you go back and look at some of my videos over last summer, you would see that pepper plant. What are my plans for 2020? I plan to plant a few more tomatoes, more cucumber, more peppers, more squash. Oh, and my squash were fairly successful, actually, relatively so, for such a small garden. And I wanted to see if I could. There were two things that I tried to grow last year that just died on me just right off the bat. One was a fig tree. The other was some sweet potato slips. Right after I planted them, the weather had been really nice. I think I've told this story before. We got a cold, it wasn't real cold, but it was real rainy and real windy. And the sweet potato slips and the fig that I planted did not like the wind. The wind just beat them up when they died. So I'm going to try those two again. And I have other plans for 2020. One of my previous videos, I told my goals for the year. So you can go back and listen to that if you really want to know some of my goals. And I gave some goals other than just my gardening too. But my plans for 2020 are to try to grow the things in my garden to be a little bigger, more lush than they've ever been, by just continuing to improve my soil, continuing to learn more about gardening. And I know I can do all of that by watching all of you guys. You all have so many tips and things that I can learn from you, and I really appreciate learning from all of you. And I hope that along the way, I do things that help you learn something too. Because this gardening thing is kind of reciprocal. We learn from each other. I'm not a homesteader, although I kind of like being part of that community. I'm just a gardener, very, very small gardener at that. But I enjoy being part of the YouTube community. I've gotten sort of acquainted with several of you, and it's been really good. There are challenges in the area where I live. We get kind of cold winters. Not super cold. We're not like in New Hampshire or anything, or in the Dakotas or any place like that, or Michigan. We're not that cold. Well, we can be for a day or so at a time, but we do get cold. The coldest it's been for us this year so far, it got down to 8 degrees one night. That's the coldest it's been. And now, like today, it's up in the 40s. And today's rainy. Our snow, there's still a few little patches of snow here and there, but most of it's gone. Whether we get more or not this winter, it's really hard to tell. You never know. Some winters we get quite a bit of snow and it'll last a week or so. Some winters we don't. And we still have a month and a half or so of winter left. So anything can happen. But I'm anxious. I've already got some of my cold weather crops started, which you probably know if you watched some of my past videos. Some of them are starting to look pretty nice. So I'm going to start things indoors again this year, like I did last year. I enjoyed that so much. It was my first attempt, and I've got things to learn, like what I learned is that even though I had last year I tried to do without much in the way of grow lights, they got really leggy, and then when I did get a grow light, I still hadn't figured quite how not to have things be leggy, but it wasn't a problem with the tomatoes. It was the cabbages and broccolis and stuff. They tend to get really leggy. And so I'm working on that. I've got things up close to the light so that they don't become quite so leggy. And I've seen a couple of other tips for helping me with that too. So we'll see how it goes. And I will keep making videos and keep you up to date on what I'm doing, both in my garden and in my kitchen and in my little indoor growing room, and any other thing that I think might be interesting for you or that I feel like sharing. Oh, one other thing, I did try once this year doing a live. It worked out pretty good, but my husband kind of got on my case because he said I talked about some things that were just a little bit too personal. So after it was all done, I put the video to private so that people wouldn't see it. I can go back and look at it if I want to. But I plan to do a few more lives here and there. That's not something I'm going to be real regular at least not for a while. I think I prefer just making the regular videos for the time being. But I do have my computer set up that I can do the lives. Can't do them directly from Facebook because I don't have enough subscribers yet. But I've got it. I downloaded a program, I think it's called OB, if I remember right, and got that all set up so that works good for if I decide to do more live videos. And I'll do one here and there. So that's my answer to my 6 questions. And I challenge you to also do those 6 questions. I will put the questions down in the description below the video that I'm making. And if you decide to take me up on the challenge, be sure and tag me on that so that I know you've done it. And I want to thank Petals on the Paving Slabs. That his name is hard to remember because it's a little bit long. Petals on the Paving Slabs. I want to thank him for challenging us to do that. And of course, Rue from Rue's Life and Jazz from Alternative Small Holdings. And anyone else who's managed to do the 2019 Gardening Year in Review Challenge. So thank you very much. Thank you for subscribing. I hope you like this video. If you haven't clicked the little notification bell, be sure and do that so you know when I have posted new videos. I usually get at least one per week. It used to always be on Sunday, but lately Sunday has not worked out for me. So it can be any time during the week. And Sometimes I'll have several days in a row, other times I won't. A little sporadic, and that's okay because I do them when I can and when feel like I've got something to say. So for now, may the good Lord richly bless you, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.